A more resilient workforce means that your employees would have the willingness and ability to respond quickly and flexibly to changing business needs. Sound amazing? Well, that's what we're talking about today. Here we are on the HR Hub podcast with me, Andrea Adams. Keep listening to learn about this and all kinds of things related to HR. You can also find me on YouTube. So today, my guest is Beverly Beuermann-King. Beverly keynotes on resilience as well as presenting workshops and participating in panels on the topic. Her company, Work Smart, Live Smart, is a resilience and corporate culture focused company helping people deal with reactions to stress and live better lives. She qualifies that more than I do, but that's my simplification. She's worked for the Canadian Mental Health Association, and currently she's the president of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. I've been aware of Beverly for years, and so now I'm happy to have her on the show. Hi, Beverly. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your insight into resilience. Uh, I don't really dawdle around much. We get right into it. So, how do you define resilience in the workplace?
It's that ability to be able to, often we talk about the bounce, but it's not just
Mm.
about the bounce. It's about being able to move through the change, the challenge, the chaos, even the trauma, and come out on the other side with being able to take all of those skills and move forward. And I think that's the big piece. It's about moving forward because we see lots of people who go through change, challenge, and trauma, and they come through, but they're changed in a way where they've lost their spirit, their sense of hope. They've lost kind of the essence of who they are.
Hmm. I mean, when you've got employees who are like that, do you get it back? Can they get it back?
It takes work to get it back, and again, we talk about burnout and we talk about depression and anxiety, and so it does have an impact, when we are not able to use all our tools, when we don't have maybe we don't even have the tools to begin with.
Mm.
Maybe there's organizational, systems and structures and procedures and processes that get in the way or that are contributing to it, and so we can, but all of those things need to be addressed in order for us to be able to move forward, in a way that is healthy to who we
Mm.
are.
I'm already going off topic, but I just thinking that the quick introduction there is like, this is so important to change, and change is, as I've said in other episodes, it's a cliche, like the pace of change is a cliche. And yet to have a workforce that can cope with that, it, it, it sounds like a fairy tale. Like, is this actually possible?
It is possible, and I think, what we look at is not only individualistic strategies, like what tools are in my tool belt, but as an organization, how do we support people for moving forward? And there is this pace change, but part of it is more so that we are so unfamiliar with the type of changes that we're expected to deal with. And so if we can look at the systems within our organizations and the things that leaders can do to support people through that, it makes it a whole lot easier, and people are able to bounce and they're able to do the things that they need to do in a way that is healthy, that is constructive, in a way that keeps that essence of who they are.
That leads perfectly into my next question. So, if we do want to create a more resilient workforce, we want them to have that bounce you're talking about. What are the things that we as employers can do to create that?
Certainly, we look at culture as part of that, and the role of the leader as part of that. And so as leaders, it really is, I talk about these 10 essential needs. What is it that our teams need in order to be engaged? And it's things, number one, and it's been number one for forever, I think, it's respect and appreciation. Respect and appreciation for their time, their energy, their education, their contribution, their years of service. I think the sad part is that many people say that they haven't received any kind of appreciation for the work that they've been doing. And so it's not just about saying thank you, but it's showing respect for the time and energy that people put in. And when we do that, we don't burn people out. We don't work them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We recognize that people need some downtime. And so, that's an interesting piece. The other kind of ones we look at is knowing what to expect, which is hard to do when there's all this change and challenge. And so even if we can say, this is what we're going to work on today, or this is what we're trying to achieve right now. We get that things will happen and there will be more, but let's focus in on this. If we can give people that more of that sense of control over what they do and how they do it, with the expectation of, this is where you're going and giving them that focus, that helps people to put things in the buckets that they need in order to be effectively able to deal with them.
So many questions from that. But the one I'm dwelling on right now is appreciation because it comes up over and over and over. And yet, organizations generally, not all of them, but most of them are really bad at it.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Um, I think we're bad at it because we think appreciation is thank you. But when I just say thank you, it doesn't have a meaning behind it. I use an acronym TMS. So TMS stands for timely, meaningful, and specific. And so, timely, I'm not going to wait till the performance review to say, oh, you know what, your work on that project 8 months ago, that was great. You did a really good job. Keep it up. It needs to be meaningful. I may want my appreciation to be more public. Somebody else may want it to be more private on a one-on-one. Um, and then specific. And so I'm not just going to say thank you, but thank you for getting that report done by 4 o'clock because that allowed me to get my stuff done so I could get out of here by 5. I really appreciate that. So, timely, meaningful, and specific. And there's all different ways of being able to do that. One company and I talk about this in my presentations, one company that I love the way they handled this was there was an organization, a team within an organization that was working this incredibly long hours. They were working on a project. And the leader not only said thank you to the team, but they sent handwritten notes home to the family members through the mail that said, thank you for your sacrifice. I know that, by that person, your spouse, your partner's, working these long hours, that was a sacrifice on your part as well. That that was huge. I mean, that recognizes that the person's not just a number, but they have a family and that there's other areas of their life that they're trying to balance.
Hmm.
Hey, business owners, executive directors, are people stresses or challenges getting in your way? Imagine managing your people issues smoothly, addressing, better yet, dealing with employee problems before they're ever a big problem, adapting to all the changes in employee rules, and doing all of this easily. I can deal with your HR challenges so they're resolved. With me, you'll get the right things done, build a strong team, and create a workplace where the right people want to be. Your business deserves to thrive without a lot of HR hassle. I'm here to help you make that happen. With my assistance, you can focus on business growth, supported by a strong team. Take a first step towards a better business today. Reach out and let's chat. Visit thehrhub.ca and let's begin transforming your people challenges.
The other follow-up question I want to ask from your previous answer was around helping them. My word is expectations. I'm not sure that that was your way, but to know what's coming and to anticipate it. So I think that's giving people more certainty. Maybe I don't know. Anyways, can you talk about that? Because in the midst of this change, it is so hard to provide employees with any degree of certainty. And how does HR do that?
Mm. I think there's so many aspects that I want to talk about with this. One of the things that I talk about again in the presentations is that anybody who's working in a situation of high demand plus low control,
Yeah.
recipe for high stress, as well as high effort plus low reward equals high stress. And so there's 4 areas that you can talk about. So how can we give people more control over how they do their job? You know, how they set their goals and that kind of piece. So high demand plus low control. You may not be able to change the demand, but can you give them more control over the situation? The other one is high effort plus slow reward. Again, you may not be able to change the effort. You may give them permission to take time off or to walk away from their desk for a little bit, or, to do some of the resiliency strategies that we talk about. But certainly, how can we show our respect and appreciation balances off that equation. So uh, for me, the respect and appreciation absolutely is number one, because it modifies how much stress, how much burnout, how much mental health challenge am I going to face because of the issues that I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay. You also these briefly talked about the 10 essential employee needs. Uh, are respect and appreciation one, or is that two?
That's one. So
That's
respect and appreciation is one.
then you talked about expectations. But anyways, can you go through the other nine
Yes. So
quickly?
quickly. Okay. So knowing what's expected,
Yeah.
feel the freedom to speak up and the ability to be heard. So those are two separate ones, right? So the ability to bring issues to the forefront and, to bring their ideas forward. Um, where am I? Sense of belonging. So
Mhm.
team, we used to call that the soft skills, right, of leadership, but it is absolutely critical in supporting people so that they know how to be able to move forward and to feel like it matters and to feel like they're connected to things. Let's see, what am I missing? Oh, the resources to get the job done. That's a big one. So I
Mhm.
think we want them to, do they have the people resources and do they have the technology resources to do the job? Because most people want to do a great job, but if they don't have the stuff to do it, then they're going to be really frustrated. The ability to bring their talents to the table. A great HR question: is there anything about you that I don't know, or is there any talent that you have that maybe we're not tapping into enough? Right? Because there's things that maybe we don't know about people. Periods of calm, not days, not weeks, not months, but sometimes moments that we can take it from way up here to down here. And then the last one is a unique one, and it's strategic hope. And it's not whimsical hope, but it's strategic. And so strategic hope is about being able to shine the light for people forward. It's about being their cheerleader. It's about making sure that they have the energy to achieve those goals. And it's helping them to be able to problem solve when things go awry.
That when we were talking before this in anticipation of the conversation was the one that intrigued me most. Uh so what are we hoping for? And yeah, tell me more about that one if you can. If there is anything else to tell.
Oh, yeah, there is. And for me, one of the quotes that I had on my desk during the pandemic was a quote from Desmond Tutu. And he says that hope is being able to see the light in spite of the darkness. And I think that is just such a powerful way of looking at the world right now, because we don't know what's going to happen,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
We don't know what's out there. But we know that people who don't have hope are dealing with despair. They're dealing with depression.
Yes.
They
Yes.
have this anxiety. Everything is an emergency. When we have hope, we have that belief that I have the skills to make things happen or to work things out, or that the world has a purpose and I have a purpose in the world and things will be okay. That's also part of hope. And so it's not just airy fairy kinds of things, but it is about I have a picture of who I want to be and where I want to go. I have the ability and the energy to be able to do the things that I want. And I know if I get stuck, if things don't go the way I want them to, I can figure it out. Or I have the people around me that can help me to figure that out. And that's the role of a leader. A leader is there to shine that beacon so people can be able to step into that light.
Hmm. That one, like I say, was the most intriguing to me because hope is such a fundamental human need. And and because it's fundamental to humanity and humans are in the workplace, it it seems like a good idea to tap into that or at least to understand it a little bit. One day I'll have to do an episode on hope alone and then people will think I've lost my mind. Um Are there 2 others that you would mention? We've talked about respect and appreciation, setting expectations, and now hope. Are there 1 or 2 others that you would highlight? You know what also strikes me before you do that about this is how similar these are in some ways to the Gallup 12. Although Gallup does not have hope as one of theirs, but anyways.
Yeah, I would say support, that sense of belonging and team building. Because we feel isolated. We feel like we're the only ones going through this. And when we can bring together that team, and it's not for raw kinds of things. It's a team to understand what are our values, team to understand the rules of engagement, building that sense of team in order to be able to support each other and to answer questions and to trust that people have our back. And that we can go to them and they're not secretly taking in the fact that we are struggling and then going to broadcast it across, kind of the airwaves. And so team is about how can we build this sense of connectedness. We know we've all heard about fight and flight,
Yeah.
our stress response. But one of the things that's actually able to overcome our stress response is our tend and befriend response. And that's that connection to the people around us. We used to call it, the instinct to protect our family or to protect our
Mm,
tribe.
mm,
That's the tend and befriend response. And when we ask for help, when we share our stories, when we, you know, celebrate our anniversaries and birth dates and milestones, that brings us together and that helps us to get through all of those stressors.
mhm. I think everyone out there, and certainly I can appreciate how having the right support makes you feel like everything is less scary. And that is a factor in resilience. Uh,
Absolute.
I'm thinking also how this connects to loneliness, but I won't go there. I won't go there. Okay.
But it does help.
What?
It does connect,
It
though.
totally connects. So people who are lonely are going to be less resilient and and that may play out in your organization. Anyway, okay. How can HR, and you talked about this systems. Man, I'm just coming back and circling to your first answers. But anyways, building the systems that support resilience. We haven't talked about even culture yet.
Uh, Probably what I would look at, Jennifer Moss has, kind of the 6 contributors to burnout, and I think that can be used in a number of different, scenarios, but, then, when we look at, number 1, it's workload. Is it sustainable? So, during an emergency, you can take on the role of 2 and 3 people and do all these tasks and try to juggle it, but that's not sustainable in the long run, and so looking, at each of the individual jobs, you know, is it sustainable going forward? What is the expectation? We know that organizations that were working at peak capacity prior to the pandemic were the ones that struggled the most during the pandemic because they had no room for the emergency. But we now know go forward, do you have room? Do you have white space for people to think, to problem solve, to future proof? If you want them to be creative and think outside of the box and to think of, ways of serving their customers in it, that, for issues that maybe even haven't occurred yet, you have to give people space. And so what does that workload look like? She also talks about, are the right people in the right job
Mhm.
right now?
Yeah.
So they might have been the right people before, but are they the right people right now? And we know in some cases we can't find people. I had one organization said, "Hey, if they come to the interview, first of all, if they show up to the interview and they have a heartbeat, they're hired." They're just so desperate for people, but we know what kind of an impact that can have when you hire the wrong person into the organization. And so, are you willing to hire, fire, and promote based on your values? Is another piece that goes with that.
Well, a lot of what you're talking about is sort of it is basic HR stuff, except basic HR stuff is often so hard to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not just the, HR's responsibility. It's a leader at every organization. Sit there and look at, how are we helping people belong? Control and respect are also part of, what Jennifer talks about. Um, you know, how do we evaluate how much people should be getting done? And it's going to fluctuate. Sometimes it's going to be they'll be able to do a lot more. Other times they'll be maybe not as productive. But if you want space for people to think, so that maybe I need to, take a couple of things away. And so it's constantly moving. But when we have the conversations at a leadership level about these things, then we're able to make the right decisions going forward.
Hmm. I remember the thought that I was having while you were talking. Your last answer was, I'm my most creative when I'm bored. I come up with the most ideas easily, hands down, when I'm bored, when I'm busy, when I'm stressed. There's no creativity happening here. But that's a case of one, but you're saying maybe I'm not unique.
It's not unique. I mean, many of us have come up with the great answers to things at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Because our mind is still processing. Things have finally calmed down enough for your mind to be creative. Or when you're in the middle of the shower, right? There are these times when that creativity it bubbles forward, but we need to give it the opportunity to bubble more often.
Mhm, and employers can plan for that. What obstacles, I'm guessing I know some of them already, but what obstacles are typical for organizations who are trying to build more workforce resilience?
Yeah, I think doing it for the wrong reasons. We want people to be resilient so they can take on more and get more things done, and we can get more out of them. Um,
Well, but isn't that why businesses exist?
it is,
They've gotta sell more of their product, they gotta be more successful in the market so they can hire more people, pay more people, contribute more. Uh,
but people are not a commodity in the way that you can use them at 100% and expect you're going to get everything from them. And so resiliency is about, how do I help get the best out of my people so that they can bring their very best self to the workplace, right? And then contribute to that bottom line. And so, I mean, and we know organizations who will work people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when they're burnt out and done, they're off and they move on to the next person. And they do the same thing and they do the same thing. And they're constantly on this roller coaster. But in this age where we are tapping into people's brain power, when we need to be creative, when we need people to future proof and to think about things that haven't even happened yet, we need people to be at their very best in our organizations, in order to be able to do that. And we can't be taxing them at 100%, like I said earlier. Mm.
all right, Beverly, where could someone find out more about you and more about the work you do?
Oh, easy. You can go to worksmartlivesmart.com, which is my website. You will see kind of my background and my kind of thinking around these things. There's over 500 articles, so that I have lots of thinking on these things that you
Yeah,
can
you do.
tap into, and then the programs that I offer. And so I do both virtual and in-person programs for teams in general and for leadership in specific, around how do we deal with people in a way that is humane and brings out the best of them so they can be engaged, so they can be productive, and so that we can, succeed together.
Well, thanks, Beverly. That was actually pretty inspiring, especially the part around hope. And, I know that it's a core element of being human. And I think it is something we should think about when, trying to help out our workforces. However, we have reached the end of this episode. Thanks for listening out there. We'll catch you next time when I talk with another insightful guest.